fantastic one to get started with.
Turf War, Schellendorf Institute here. Both of these teams have known, they've been able to see this bracket. They know that this is their first real test. They know that this is just one step further along this gauntlet here as we get started with our coverage of the US-Canada Inkling Open.
So I do want to mention Gamer, or Shadow Chimera rather. Shadow going to be running the Hydra Splatling. Not a Splatling that we see very often, although if you do get that full charge, it is so difficult to block the shots of. Of course, if you have Umbrella Shield to protect you, that's going to be of major assistance. So Kudos will go down, and the Ink Armor's already out here. Shaq pushing up very far. They've already forced a 3 down, and Saikai takes the early control.
Now, we said earlier that it really is the last 30 seconds that matter here, so let's keep an eye out on how Monarchy opts to push their way back in here. They don't need to be too hasty here. They can build up their specials. As long as they don't spend most of the game in their spawn, they're going to have a chance to stack things and push back in later.
We see the Tenta Missiles coming out. The Tenta Missiles have undergone a couple of changes. You can now go into the ink when you're using them, so you are no longer just a sitting target, or a standing target, rather, when you fire them off, and that can back off an aggressive enemy team. As you can see, Saikai now being pushed back a little bit more towards mid, while the members of Monarchy get control of themselves. B getting closer and closer to that second ink armor of the game, but now more and more Monarchy pushing forward into the middle section of the map. They will lose one, however, as it's now a 3v3. Sammy just going to pop that baller in the middle section of the map, tried to get it on that box, but unfortunately fell just off here. But now finally Monarchy gaining some control, and the baller with, or the Slosher Deco with that baller and the Sprinkler rather, it builds it up so quickly that you can just pop it whenever you need to. You don't necessarily need to coordinate it with your team.
No, and you can really see why it's been such a popular pick. As a matter of fact, based on statistics, it is the most popular pick in the game right now. Just so versatile. Doesn't need a whole lot of support. Can do a lot of different things for your team. It cannot win a 2v1, however. As we saw right there, Chat going to go ahead and crash right in, and already this map is coming back the other way. One thing that I do want to point out here, look at the range differential between these two teams. We said earlier that the Dually Squelchers is not a common pick. Well, by our words, we're seeing it in map number 1. They're having such a hard time getting past this range advantage.
Yeah, and the one range advantage that I think is pretty important here is those Splatlings. You do have Shadow Chimera, who does outrange Gamer's heavy Splatling Deco, but the bubbles, like I mentioned before, they're so nice to push in and get back into the middle section of the map, even if you're behind on turf. The Ink Armor is at the ready. So far, it's going to be Monarchy with 2 specials at the ready, but they only have 2 members left. Nice splashdown to stay alive just for a second, and they will end up getting the trade. So a 2v2 as we've entered that 30 seconds that are so crucial here. It's looking like Monarchy's actually coming back a little bit, but now as the kills start to roll in, Saikai maintaining this control in mid. They should have at least one more bomb rush, splat bomb rush, before this game's over.
And Sammy went in just a little bit too deep there, had baller and pushed in, got taken down to start all of that. Gonna get crashed in upon here as well. There's a lot of paint here in the middle. Now everyone just shooting whatever they can, trying to grab some turf here. I'll be interested in seeing what way Judd takes it. It does look like Saikai with a little bit more control up at the top, but we'll see. This is close.
And it is going to be Saikai that will take it. Very close. Just, I believe, fewer than a % difference between those two squads. So it shows you that this one could very easily make its way to a Game 5.
We didn't get the Dually Squelchers pick right, but we did get the fact that these two teams are very evenly matched correctly. I love it at the end of Turf War when there's 5 or so seconds left. Suddenly, objective doesn't matter. It's let me spin around as fast as I can, put as much paint down, save up enough ink so that I can throw my suction bomb at the end, and then just leave it up to Judd at that point. But I do want to point out there, they had 3 specials up there going into the last 25-30 seconds, and Sammy went down a little bit ahead of the rest of the team. Now, they didn't completely lose control there, and Sammy was able to get back into the middle to help contribute. But if that had gone a different direction, we might have seen a bit of a shutout there from Monarchy.
And that's why I wouldn't be surprised to see any of these players running Special Saver. Special Saver is a perk that does allow you to keep some of that progress that you've built up towards popping your special. And if you do go down within that 30 to 45 second mark, you can still very easily have an impact on the rest of the game. There's some specials that you basically have to have available for you in the last 30 to 45 seconds, especially if you have Ink Armor, which was present in that game. It's so nice to have that going forward, because if you can take out even 2 members of the enemy team, that puts you at a crucial advantage going forward. So with the range differential of these teams, I don't expect that to change as we move on to Kelp Dome. The Splatlings should have a field day, as this map is just littered with grates that you can walk around upon, a catwalk above the map where you can take down enemies that don't even see you. So you're going to have to tread very carefully. It's almost like going up against a sniper. Your positioning has to be impeccable, or you have to pull off the best flank of your life in order to take them out.
The best flank. That's a really good way to phrase it. We've seen on splat zones here how difficult it can be to make your way back to the middle, because there's only so many ways, if you get shut out and go 3 or 4 down, that you can get back to the middle. And that's why we say there's a big difference between 3 down and 4 down in a game like this.
So pretty interesting to see Shadow Chimera running that thermal ink. What that does is that if you are able to mark your target, if you're able to get a little bit of damage on them, you are able to see them at a certain distance behind walls and know where they're going to peek out. So it does give you a bit of advantage if they get within their optimal range. You can sort of back off while still seeing them and be able to take them out. We already have the Bubble Blower coming out from Gamer here. They will also have the Splash Wall that will give them some protection if somebody does climb onto the grating. And that Stingray, you can see an absolute meltdown as Shadow Chimera is going to force away any members there that are pressing too far forward from Saikai. However, Gamer being very aggressive, walking forward to challenge Shadow Chimera, and ends up with the win in that regard.
And the relationship here between these two Splatlings and the deliberate choice of Bubbles over Stingray is such an interesting one here, because it can be very difficult to get back in on this map if you do not have that Stingray. I know a lot of times people will say that this is the hardest map to get back in on, and you need the aid of the Stingray and that long-range pressure, though it didn't look like it worked out for them there.
We also have the Sorella out here. The auto bomb can be so tricky to deal with. You can be in the middle of a 1v1 or even a 1v2 and not see it, and before you know it, it's detonated below your feet and you are already taken out. ESME going to be on the Tensitech here as well. The Inkjet, not something you would normally think would be great for Turf War, but just the capacity to be able to take out 2 members of the enemy team, or even just back them off a little bit. They've reduced how effective it can be in terms of the hitboxes from what it once was in the early stages of Splatoon 2, but even just getting an indirect can force them to sort of rethink their positioning and give you a better shot at taking the middle of the map. The Sorella going in right now, getting 1 kill in the midst of the spawn here. So Saikai with no objection to just keeping Monarchy as locked into these 2 choke points as possible.
And one of the things that really helps out with that as well is if the opponent can't get out to do any painting, they can't build up their specials. We have talked so much about using your specials to put back or push back in. It's such an integral part of the game. But if you're stuck all the way back up in your spawn, there is a finite amount that you can actually paint. And I think Saikai has done such a great job of keeping them pinned back this entire game.
And you can see there that Rapid versus Brella duel. There are some weapons that just have a more difficult time with the way their firing pattern works versus a Brella. Just because if the Brella knows what they're doing, they can stick their shield up right as the shot is about to hit them, get 1 or even 2 shots of damage on the enemy, and that's why the Rapid Blaster was having such difficulty there. B trying to pull off the Inkjet, but it's not going to work, as we do see the Dually Squelchers making a return here from Sunny. The Tenta Missiles are at the ready, but they're not exactly in a great position. The Ink Armor will help them out pretty drastically. They're trying to get both B and Tudos in, but they're going to have to settle for just 1. And now, in the remaining seconds here, it's looking like Saikai trying to make sure this middle of the map is locked down. The final kill onto Tudos should help. And as the game ends here, it's going to be another close one.
Ticking down here. It does look like the mid is pretty purple there, though it looked like B was able to get some ink up there. I do think that this one's going the other way. Wow, close games all around. We called this one pretty well here. That is 2 matches that are less than 50 points away from each other. And for those of you who are new to Splatoon, 50 points goes by like that. That is holding down some shots for a second, maybe 2 seconds, a couple of sloshes here, a well-placed bomb and a shot another direction. These are very, very close matches.
And I really like that this tournament is best of 5. You know, a lot of tournaments start out with best of 3 up to a point, maybe top 32, top 16. Best of 5 really does give you the opportunity to make a mistake and still be in the game. So both of these matches have been incredibly close in terms of percentage at the end of the game. I think the kill differential has also been relatively similar. So it is incredibly likely that Monarchy could still take this Game 3 and Game 4 and force a Game 5, if not a reverse sweep. So we move on to Piranha Pit. a Splatoon 1 map that was only recently introduced into Splatoon 2, so I think teams are still somewhat getting this map down. It does change pretty drastically from mode to mode, but the Turf War iteration is mostly what you remember from Splatoon 1. The main difference being those two rotating platforms on the middle portion of the map are pretty heavily separated now. So you have this big open space in the middle of the map that allows longer range weapons like the Rapid Blaster we saw, like the Splatlings we've been seeing, to do very, very well against their opponents, and it makes short-range weapons have to think about their positioning a lot more, just because there's not nearly as many places for them to hide.
There's not nearly as many places. However, this is still a very big map, the biggest map in Splatoon 1. There are some changes, but this is one of the only times that you will see people actually make an effort to go all the way down to the very bottom of both of those ramps and paint. It might be a solid 30 seconds before we see a big confrontation in the middle.
And look at all those conveyor belts. It does give an extra added bit of fun to your positioning if you can sort of stay at the top of one of those. And Tunos actually moved back into a splat bomb there and was kept alive by that ink armor. So that again tells you how important that special is. As you mentioned, it's such a huge map that you have to be sort of wary of where everybody's positioning. You have to also consider how much turf you have down on the left and right hand sides of the map, because it's easy to forget while you're in these 1v1 engagements how the enemy team has painted the left and right hand sides here. So Sunny, using that mobility very, very well, is going to pop the 10 missiles and get 3 in their sights. Whether that results in any kills remains to be seen. The 10 attack will go down, however, on the side of Monarchy. They're also going to lose Sammy here. Shadow Chimera forced to back off, and Saikai really getting their bearings about them now.
Look at the way that they're just pushing in. They are rushing forward with no regard for human life. But one thing I do want to say here that you're seeing, it's a much more short-range and aggressive comp coming out from Saikai. They're finding ways to push in, and they're almost turning the long range of Shadow Chimera into a liability. While he's standing back there and farming those Stingrays, the control of these conveyor belts that you mentioned being so crucial, they are completely in Saikai's favor, and they haven't even started to turn yet.
I am a little bit surprised that so many short-range weapons have been brought in. Nice flick shot with the Brella there to take out B. Will pay for it with his life, however, as Tudos is going to finish off the full wipe. The Zimmy being the first one to come back from spawn, and Sammy just celebrating and getting a little bit extra ink with that baller there. We haven't talked a little bit about the curling bomb. The curling bomb is such a nice way to get in. That's part of why the Zimmy is so effective, is because it does have that shorter range for a Splatling, but the curling bomb allows you to just blow through enemy ink and get right up into your opponent's faces. Yet another Stingray coming out here from Shadow Chimera. They do have to back off and move away from that auto bomb, which does stop the extra sides of the damage from that Stingray coming out. We also see the Inkjet. Shaq trying to pick off B, but B's positioning very, very strong here, as Shaq will be forced to back off without any kills gained. And so as we are in the last 45 or so seconds of this match, it's going to be Saikai pushing in a lot more aggressively than Monarchy. And Monarchy, not really any specials besides the Inkjet that they just lost to contend with.
No, and losing all the way back into the packed line. Shaq is going to go in the zone I did not think that they were ever going to be able to get into, as you see the middle of this going so very pink as well. There's going to be one last chance here. 20 seconds, and now the size of the map starts to come into play here. Even if they are able to take a couple members of Saikai down, they're going to have to cover so much ground. They're starting to run in and starting to push in, but I think it's just going to be a little too late. Shaq was able to take down B there. Sammy going to be the last one alive. Nothing doing there. And finally, we see a more dominant performance as Saikai hits their stride.
Yeah, Sammy really would have been a game-changing player there, but unfortunately got locked in a 2v1 that they lost. Not able to get out of that corner of the map, and you can see there the percent differential on this map in particular, incredibly high, 62.2 to 30.3, about a 32-point difference there. Shaq getting the highest KA, but we also saw a lot of important specials getting popped quite frequently. The 10 missiles coming out 5 times there. We also saw several ink storms. It's hard to contend with that much ink coming out.
And a lot of people don't show a lot of love to the Tentamissiles, and rightfully so. They're the least common pick, but on a map like that is so long and narrow, I feel like more often than not you are going to find ways to get 3, sometimes all 4 members of the enemy team in your reticle, and that does provide some pain, and it allows you to push in. You saw that time when Shaq made that big push into the enemy side that was really the turning point in the game. He was able to do that because he had support from, you guessed it, the Missiles. So a very interesting way to play that non-meta weapon, that non-meta special, and really that's been Saikai's MO since they started playing this game.
Yeah, two completely different approaches to the game. I think Monarchy relied a lot on the Ink Armor, and that takes away one of your potential specials that can actually have an impact on the objective in this case, which is laying ink onto the ground. So they give up the potential for something like a Missiles or a Bubble Blower or an Ink Storm in favor of being able to resist one of those extra shots. But if you're still losing those 1v1 engagements, or if you're letting yourself get caught in a 1v2 or 1v3, then the Ink Armor is not going to make that much of a difference. Or if you're only able to pop it when one or two of your teammates is alive, again, not going to be that impactful. So Saikai really layering their specials very well. I think the actual weapons that they used were fantastic choices for each of the modes. The Splatlings did very, very well, of course. Having the Bubble Blower there and the Zimmy really did have an impact in those two maps respectively, but I think on the scoreboard, it's not as clear a picture as what we just saw. Those first two games especially, incredibly close, could have gone the other way. We could have gone into Game 3 with a 2-0 Monarchy lead. Unfortunate that it had to end that way for them, but Saikai really did tough it out, especially in those first two matches.
Absolutely, and it's good to see a close match like that early on. Two of our heavier hitters as we kind of search for more tournament play that I think was really befitting of a tournament like this. Just how big it is, how many teams are coming in. It's hard to search these out and find them, man. Amazing job to the TOs for keeping their heads around this, because goodness me, I can't keep my head around it.
There are matches upon matches to look at and deal with. I do want to shout out a couple of teams that have lost that we expected to go further. We have already seen Yami get knocked out of the tournament in round 5, a 3-0 loss to Over Air. That's pretty unbelievable. We thought, of course, they would make it at least into top 16, if not top 8. And we already mentioned Legacy having to take on Komodo in round 3. So even though it's still relatively early, lots of teams dropping. And this is single elimination. So once you've lost, your chances are completely gone.
That's okay. All right. Well, we have had a top 10 seed drop in round 5. That's unbelievable. I can't... wow. All right. My picks not only look silly right now, they look awful. We've also seen Envision went down, our 17 seed. Scrivener went down, our 16 seed. Hey, whatever hidden bosses are out there, thank you for showing up to this, but you're making us look really bad out here. Like a 3-0 victory over Yami? Wow.
And that's one of the things that I love about this tournament in particular, is that normally on our everyday weekend tournaments, we don't have a turnout in the triple digits. So this is really sort of bringing out those teams that have waited or just newly formed that could seriously have an impact on the competitive scene if they would get into these more usual weekly tournaments. And we could potentially see them take down even more of these top 16, top 8 teams. We also saw Sugar, who I've been, expecting a lot of great things out of. They have some players that have been in the game for a long time. They also go down to a 3-0 in round 5 to Clam Burglars. So just a lot of teams that are names that participate frequently are going down to teams that I wish would get into those tournaments.
Well, let's continue. Let's just keep this is like the Hunger Games right now, and the cannon's going off here as the heads continue to roll. License to Krill, our 13 seed, goes down 3-0 to Sailor Squid Guardians, the 190 seed. So another one of our top 20 teams goes down. Alacrity, the 20 seed, goes down to Wonky Bros. They will be up against Fried Calamari here next. So teams continue to drop to, like you said, teams that we've never heard of. All of these players coming in saying, hey, a trip to E3 is enough to get me to come out to play. I mean, you've seen the numbers of how many players are out there in S+. And I know that there's this mentality towards solo queue, to S+ solo queue, that it's not worth it. But at some point, forged in the fires of solo queue, you start to put things together. Even if you don't show up to all the tournaments, sometimes it's a matter of ignorance and not a lack of skill. And I do think that we're seeing that here today.
I could throw 1,000 cliches out there about, the 10,000 hours theory. Practice makes perfect, but it really is true. The teams that are excelling here do have anywhere from 500 to well over 1,000 hours put into the game, and that's split between scrimmages, private battles, ranked, and league. And just getting that practice, no matter who it's against, as long as you can find teams at around or even above your skill level to consistently go up against, it does improve your play. And you know, you might think at some point, once you get to a certain